so glad to see all of you. It's a beautiful day here in Dothan. Uh, we thank you for joining us. This is our series we call Game Changing Leadership. And I think this is probably the 15th or 16th event we've held in the last 2 years. And the topics that we cover has been surrounding things like financial literacy, long-term financial planning for your organization, and of course, giving to your organization, which is very important. We've tried to choose topics that we felt were geared to increasing funding and also showing you that your foundation is here to support you. So today we're going to be talking about year-end giving and the opportunities that present itself through a couple of things and that come about around the year end. But of course, this is something we've been doing for 2 years. But as most of you know, or maybe you don't know, the foundation's primary services center around fund management, investing either reserve monies for your organization or gift monies, long-term gift monies. We also make loans to churches for building projects. These are first mortgage 15-year loans. But we also work with our churches to help them encourage and receive long-term gifts and plan for the long-term financial support of the organization. So if your church or your organization have any of those needs, contact us and we'll see if we can help you with some of that. So I don't want to take up much time. I want to introduce our speaker. I'm just excited to have him back. Our speaker's name is Chris Stovall, and he's become like part of the staff almost. He's provided a lot of these webinars for us. And Chris is a generosity strategist. He works for a company called Generis, and that is his area of expertise. He works as a coach and a consultant to both clergy and staff in organizations where they're looking to improve the financial wellness of your organization. The unique thing is Chris is a former pastor. So he has a great understanding of, how important financial wellness is in your organization, but also the struggles that come along with staying well supported, and how it all connects into your ministry and leading people to Christ. So he's very well qualified, and we're just excited to have him back. He always shares something new with us, practical tips, things that you can take back to the office with you and actually use. In addition to the ideas and the strategies he's going to share today, I think towards the end of the presentation, he may share with you just an overview of some of the more comprehensive services that he and Generis offer in your, that would be specific and unique to your organization. So I hope you'll wait around for that information as well. But Chris, we're so glad to have you with us. Would you mind opening us up with a word of prayer before we get started?
I would love to. I'd love to. Let's pray. Father God, what a great day it is every day that you give us. And we're grateful as you have really taught me to pray. We're grateful to come around your table right now as a group and for you to make us better. And so, God, I just pray that my words would be directed by you and that the things that I share would fall in good soil, would fall on hearts that I know want to see the kingdom mission, the God-inspired vision that each of these wonderful leaders have for their church, to see that thrive. And so, God, I thank you in advance for what you're going to do and how you're going to take the things that are shared here and you're going to make them very personal and very specific and very applicable to each one of these leaders. And we just pray all of that. I ask your favor on them and I ask your blessing on them as well. And we pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen. The greater balance of what I wanted to share with you is about year-end giving. And at the end, kind of what the strategy that we've started using here with these webinars, in my partnership with Terry, and as we work together in these, is just kind of save a little bit of a commercial there at the end, but make the greater preponderance of this good content and things. My goal, because I had this way whenever I was a pastor, is I want to go to if I'm going to take the time to give to a webinar, I want to have some things I can use immediately when I leave. And so my goal is to give you some of that. When you look at year-end giving strategy, here's the thing: a lot of churches don't really lean into year-end giving. Whenever I did this, kind of did a similar webinar like this last year, and who knows, Terry, I may be doing another one next year. We may just be doing, this is kind of a subject we have to hit on every year. But generally speaking, as I see it, churches really don't lean into year-end giving. And it's unfortunate because a lot of givers, especially in 2021, but a lot of givers are thinking about what they're going to do, because many people are getting a bonus, an end-of-year bonus, that they're trying to sort out what they're going to do with that. There's a lot of people that are looking at their last thing that they can do before December 31st in terms of charitable giving, because they basically have decided, I'm either going to give it to something I care about, or I'm going to give it to the IRS. And so they're looking for what are things that they're excited about, what are things that they're connected to that they can give to. And unfortunately, all too often the church just stays silent on it. They just don't talk about it. And so what I encourage churches to do is to not only talk about it, but to build a narrative around what is it that we'd want to accomplish with our year-end giving. So the first step of what I would tell you to do, if you're thinking about, okay, Chris, I want to do a year-end giving strategy, the first thing is I would tell you to determine, where do you stand in terms of your giving right now? So what do I mean by that? Well, are you going to make budget this year? Are you going to make budget? Are you projecting to exceed budget? Where are you with your budget? And are there things that need to be made up? Meaning, do you have needs within ministry strategies that you want to do? And there are areas where that you would like to fund some of these things before the end of the year, or to position yourself. You'd like to get some things in place to launch you into 2022. The other thing is, what reserve do you feel like you need to go into next year? If anything, I used to, pre-pandemic, I used to talk to churches about the impact of what happened in 2008 whenever we had the stock market crash, and churches that had an operational reserve were in a much better position to navigate that than churches who did not. And I'm still amazed, even now, post-pandemic, a lot of the churches who did well in getting through the pandemic, when things initially hit, is they had those operational reserves. Now, all truth be told, for most churches, what netted out is giving ended up being pretty solid through 2020. But now in 2021, what happened when the pandemic hit is, what we saw is there was a lot of people that we looked at savings in general that were kind of going like this over the last 5 years. And then we hit this point where the pandemic hit, and then savings went almost vertically up. And what the economic reports tell us is people started saving money like they never have before. And so now here we come to the end of 2021, and there are people who are sitting on savings, or even some cases people sitting on capital gains, and they need to do something. So then pointing them towards, as you start evaluating where you are we going to make budget? Well, that's something that you could build into the narrative of what you want to accomplish before the end of the year, thus painting a vision for what you could do with year-end giving. Are there projects and ministry strategies you either want to like to fund before the end of the year, or there are ministry strategies that you would like to immediately launch into at the first of the year? So getting those things in place now would help you start well as you launched into the first of the year. Or even, are there operational reserves that you want to have as you launch into 2022? The other thing is are your number of giving units down? Are your number of giving units up? That's something you need to look at as you look at the end of the year, so that part of what your year-end giving strategy could be, as much as talking about what you might do with the money, also talking about the complexity of what we really want to do is, if you've not, if you've not given to our church yet, you're still considering whether that's something you want to do. It would be great for us to launch in this together before we get into the first of the year. This would be a great time for you to make a gift to this strategy, or to this, whatever, again, you've laid out as an objective that you want to accomplish in your year in giving, and invite people that this is a great time to onboard. This is a great first thing to start your giving journey with our church. This is a great first thing for you to start into, and then you can supplement that narrative with expressing to the congregation, we've had X number of new givers in 2021. We've had X number of households that have started giving to the church during this year, and we'd love for you to join us before the year is up as we carry momentum into 2022. Well, now if I'm not giving to the church, I've been invited to start giving, but I've been invited to join a group of people who had already made that decision. You see what I'm saying? And so I'm inviting them into something, to join into something, rather than isolating them and making them feel guilty that they haven't done it yet. Those are two comparisons, and one is, I think, much more appealing. So first off, figuring out where you are, and then are there things, really narrowing down on the things that you might want to accomplish. And so I want to get in a few more specifics here. Are there things within your missions, kind of pairing off of Giving Tuesday, but if of that same ilk, are there some missions giving? I know a lot of my clients, they're focusing on that they want to do this with these mission organizations, or we want to do this with this community mission, or we want to help with this. Is there a capital purchase that you want to do that somehow is going to propel ministry forward in your church if you make this capital purchase and help this ministry strategy go forward? Is there some amount of debt reduction that you'd like to do before the end of the year? That could be one of the purposes that you lay out. Is there a new ministry strategy or a new ministry that you want to launch into as you go into 2022? So these are just a few ideas of some things that could be part of what you're setting your goal towards and what you want to accomplish with your year in giving. So once you decide what your narrative is, then you need to set a clear financial goal. And if there are multiple pieces, then you need to be really careful about how you set boundaries around this. And this is what I mean. I'm gonna give you an example. A church I was working with in Arkansas, and they wanted to give money towards these Bible translators that were going to be translating the Bible in this. I can't remember off the top of my head now where it was, but there was a Bible translation of a language that the Bible had not been translated, and they wanted to fund this. And so all of their year-end giving was going to go towards funding this project and also towards debt reduction. And so the client and I were talking about it, and I said, okay, so how are you going to do this? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to split it 50-50. So we're just going to split all the year-end giving towards this. And I said, so if I'm going to make a $500,000 gift, are you going to give $250,000 to this Bible translation? And he went, no. I said, then I'm not making a $500,000 unless you clarify that. I'm not making a $500,000 gift, or a $100,000 gift, or a $50,000 gift, or a $10,000 gift, because you've not set any boundaries on this. And so when I say set clear financial goals, you need to say, what we're going to do is the first, if the Bible translation project, in this case, it was their top priority and they wanted to fund 20,000 towards that, then you need to say the first 20,000 is going to go to this, and then everything above that is going to go to debt reduction. Now, if I'm somebody that has the capacity or I'm somebody that can make a high capacity gift, these people are shrewd. and they're going to come to you and say, have we funded out the Bible translation? No, we're still 10,000 short on that. Okay, well then here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a gift, and I'll finish up what we need for the Bible translation, and then the rest of this is going to go towards the debt reduction. You're much more likely to get that year-end gift because you set clear parameters on what the year-end giving is going to go, how it's going to go, versus just this wide open idealistic idea. And then very shrewd people with their money, people who have a gift of giving as identified in the book of Romans, they're not going to go with this kind of wide open narrative that doesn't have any boundaries. They're going to want to know that you have a plan, and that there's some boundaries set between where the money's going to go and how it's going to go. So if you've got 3 pieces to your year-end giving strategy, you need to think through that someone who is maybe going to make a larger gift, how this might fall on their ears and how they might think through this, and a way of directing them so that they would feel good about making that gift. So these are some ideas about year-end giving. Obviously, when it gets to communication, to go back to what we said before and what Tom even asked about, is you need to make sure you're communicating this all the different ways, but you need to build out a narrative that you can get your year-end giving. This is my personal kind of calm strategy, is that you can get this down to 5 sentences. Can you describe what you're going to do with year-end giving in 5 sentences or less? If you can't do it in 5 sentences, then in my opinion, you need to keep working on it, because it needs to be readable. If you're going to put it in print, it needs to have plenty of white space around it so that when I glance at it, I think I can absorb this in 30 seconds or less. I'm going to read this. If I can't, I'm not going to read it. And it's the same thing as you communicate in social media. So not only would I have my 5 sentences, my recommendation is go another step. And can you say what your year-end giving strategy would be in 1 sentence? That you could also have a version where you could say this in 1 sentence to at least garner appeal for me to want to read the larger narrative, meaning the 5 sentences. So those are some ideas around year-end giving. So what I want to do is I have something I want to share at the end that is specific to year-end giving, tell you about something that we're going to put in your hands and talk to you a little bit about what I do, but I'll do that at the end. I wanted to give plenty of time for you to ask questions or have conversation or share ideas or whatever you might want to do in this. In most cases, yes. Now, the only thing I would say is if part of your narrative in this is the first priority is going to be to fund out what we need for our budget between now and the end. So we're going to need, 18,000 to finish out our budget, or 27,000 to finish out our budget. So the first 27,000 is going to go to this, and then the next priority is this, and then the next priority is that. But short of that, everything you just described would be exactly the case. You need to be able to identify where the money could be directed specifically to those things. If you're going to, here's the key, if you're going to make the funding of your budget part of your year-end giving strategy, like what some churches will do is they're going to assume they're on track. If people keep giving what they're going to give normally, then they're not going to make that part of their year-end giving narrative because they feel like that money's coming in, so we're good. Does that make sense? I see you shaking your head. So, yeah. So, but there's some churches, like I talked to a church yesterday, and, September wasn't a great month and October was an even worse month. And so they're under about 16, 17,000 right now. And so as they're looking at what their year-end giving strategy is going to be for December, they're going to make their budget part of what they're going to communicate in their year-end giving strategy, because they're not convinced that they're going to fund out, their budget. And so again, that's a choice. So let's assume your budget is not going to be part of that. Then what you would say is I would, again, dipping into the capital campaign verbiage, is that as you're thinking about year-end gifts, I don't know that I'd use the word strategy, but as you're considering, meaning, because this is an outward facing communication, as you're considering your year-end gifts, for us here at our church, what we're going to do is all the gifts that we receive over and above your regular giving, there was the capital campaign dip in the verbiage, is the first whatever is going to go to this, and then everything else above that is going to go to this, to debt reduction or whatever operational reserve, or to start this other ministry project or whatever it is. And so you make no mention of budget because you're assuming that that's going to come in. You would add the over and above as a way of maybe complementing the fact that you don't have any budgetary ties to your year-end giving strategy. In most cases, you're going to want buy-in from your finance team. You're going to want a buy-in from everybody. And quite honestly, what do you think about this? What do you think our priorities should be with year-end giving? That sort of thing. The other piece of this is for people to also consider, especially in today's world, what are all the different ways by which somebody could give? Typically we only refer to the 8% of people's wealth, meaning cash. Studies have shown that 8% of people's wealth is actually liquid cash, that 92% of their wealth is something other than cash. So year-end gifts could be stocks. In today's world, it could be cryptocurrency. It could be several different things like that, which people would gladly be willing to donate, because if they bought the stock and they're looking at this and they're looking at capital gains, and sometimes they just don't think about those kind of gifts in relation to the church because that thinking, for whatever reason, just got removed. And so including these ideas of how they could give at the year end sometimes open avenues of thinking that they maybe didn't previously consider. I got a lot of churches now that cryptocurrency has become part of the conversation more and more and more. And the way cryptocurrency works is from what I've seen, a lot of these givers, there's an immediacy to it because it's worth this today. It may not be worth this tomorrow. So if I'm going to make a gift, I got to make it today, and we're starting to learn about that whole genre of giving and that whole genre of wealth. Yeah. So I'm going to start this answer, but I'm going to swing it to Terry really fast. But if your church doesn't have a brokerage account or doesn't have a way to do that, which Terry can help you with, that's where Terry, we're now right in her wheelhouse. But you need to have a mechanism by which you can receive that, so that all the things you just said, Tony, because for them to sell it, now they're in a bind. Terry, why don't you jump in here and take
we've taken care of a lot of the administrative part of that. In fact, I've had 4 calls today from donors wanting to transfer funds in. It's particularly right now with the market being where it is, that's a huge source of year-end giving is monies that have appreciated. And this way they're able to avoid the capital gains, just like you said. But it does have to be transferred to another or to a nonprofit. So what we have done is set up kind of a clearing account with Wells Fargo. We have a form that the donor fills out. They give a copy of it to their broker. A copy of it comes to us. And basically the broker transfers it to our account and we sell it. We have on there instructions for where the money is to go, how it's to be used. We also handle the tax reporting letter that they need if they itemize on their taxes and want to know how much they can deduct. We'll provide that for them. And we do this free of charge. Of course, there is a commission to the broker for selling it, but we also have an arrangement with our broker that we have a discount.
Every church is a snowflake and every snowflake is different. Some churches that, leaning into that more, on a Sunday during service is not going to be seen as anything egregious, if you will. And then there's others that that would be, no, we can't even think about that. Generally speaking, leaning into this overtly in Sunday worship, I would say, is not ideal, but making an announcement about it in worship along with other things that you're talking about. Whereas, for instance, one of the things we want to remind you is you're considering your year-end gifts. We have some more information, but basically we have a strategy of, we want to do this and we want to do that. If you want more information, this is where you go, or you can come to, as you said, this Sunday afternoon and we'd get glad to explain it, or, we've got a video that we'd love for you to watch. So you touch on it, but then they can go somewhere else to get more information. So that's kind of the more accepted answer, where you want to make them aware of it, but you don't necessarily want to roll out the whole thing, where you're taking a lot of time of it, in worship, talking about that. Yeah, and again, if your church is digitally savvy, you can introduce it like an announcement, and then say, here's a communication where you can get it, whether it's in print or whatever it is, and then you have a connecting point where they can ask questions. There's all kinds of follow-up. I had a couple of churches that did a combined Sunday school, and they did combined Sunday school and pointed, next Sunday, we're going to be doing combined Sunday school, where if you want to learn more about this is where you can come and we'll answer all your questions. And because they didn't want to take another slot of time, and so they wanted to do it at a time where people were already there. For churches that are digitally savvy, obviously what I talked about before, you can connect them to a video like a Vimeo or whatever, and then they can watch the video and then learn from that. But those that aren't, like you said, you could end service early and talk about it that way, do a combined Sunday school. There's a lot of different ways.
A lot of times the gifts that are considered year-end gifts, as well as gifts that are made to endowments, are coming out of the same pocket, if that makes sense to you. It's usually out of that 91, 92% of assets that are not liquid. So I think those two topics can be discussed at the same time.
So anybody else? Got a few minutes here. All right, then here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to share screen here real quick. I wanted to show you something. You can download an ebook that you can read a little bit more about year-end giving. There's also a roundtable that we did at Generis, and you could watch that if you want. You can also order a Generosity Pulse report. There's a couple of other things. There's an 11-month giver communication ebook that talks about different communications you can do with your church. And then there is a download of intentional giving moments. You've heard me talk about offering moment and giving moment. And we've had some of our folks who have written some offering moments, and you can get actual offering moments that have been written out, and you can download that as well. You can see my contact information if that's helpful. I will say on the offering moments that I think you'll find 4 of them to be really, really awesome. I know the author very well who wrote them, and I'm sure you'll just be amazed and astounded. No one's laughing. This was my time to be funny, because obviously I was the one that wrote them. But, and the other part of that, of wrapping things up here, obviously, if you've got something that you need, if you're thinking, Chris, we'd love to have some coaching in the area of generosity, or if you're thinking about doing a generosity initiative, guys, I've been blessed by this association. I'm excited about helping the churches in this conference. And I just want to say thank you. And if you need something or would like to work with me, I'd love to work with you. Obviously, I do this to help you, but I also do this to try to get connecting points where, if you're thinking about doing something, I'd love to be the one to help you with that. So hopefully I say that appropriately and respectfully as we do each of these webinars. So just wanted to put that out there. Terry, that's what I had for today. Hopefully it was a blessing to everybody, but hopefully you took some things out of this that were useful for you. But Terry, I'll hand it back to you.
Well, we just appreciate you so much and the time that you've spent in helping us to share some good information that everyone can use. I know everybody's busy, but I hope you've gotten some good information out of this. So we will say goodbye until next time, and God bless. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.